Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everybody. How's it going?
It's a good day.
We were just talking before we got on air. I was like, man, I'm so tired right now. I had one of these dumb mornings. It's been, I don't know, maybe I'm stressed. Maybe there's things going on. I don't know. But my head pops off the pillow like at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm like, hello, welcome world. Let's go. And I'm like, it is too dang early to be getting up and thinking about things. And everything I watch on like YouTube shorts or all those other little, short programs, they're like, how do you be super uber productive in the girl life and be super successful? I get up early and I'm like, yeah, I would rather just sleep in. I'm sorry.
I definitely am in the camp of those guys that are like, no, man, you need a solid 6 to 8 hours every night.
I'm trying.
I try to get to 8 at my age, but it's like typically not. But yeah, 4:30, dude. It was this last year. All of a sudden, that's been a time that I like am waking up for some reason.
Yeah,
but I absolutely refuse to get out of bed, no matter how like awake I am. I'm like, no, this is just dumb. No, I'm not doing it.
No, I'll just hop on YouTube Shorts for about 3.5 hours, and then I'll fall back asleep, and then I'll have to get up for a podcast. Like, so that seems like a good trend that seems to be working.
That's probably not ideal.
Probably not ideal either.
I think 4:30 means it's a little different with the younger kids because if I wake up at 4:30, it's like, oh great, I have 35 more minutes.
A child, 35 more minutes.
Yes,
before the little ones get out of bed.
It is the brick wall of mornings because you cannot push that back. So
no, that's true. Yeah. That is true. And it doesn't matter if you send your little ones to bed earlier. The earlier you're sending them to bed, it doesn't mean the later they get up.
Yeah, you feel they're like, good, this 7 o'clock, great. You're like, wait a second.
The math doesn't work.
Yeah,
the math just clearly does not
we
work.
need to go to bed now.
Yeah, I agreed. So this is going to be a very coffee-filled morning for me this morning.
It's not like you're putting on a in-person and live event at the same time today.
It's not like I'm busy today.
The second largest city in the nation. So
maybe I was waking up because I was excited. Maybe that was part of it too. Like maybe I'm thinking. I was definitely thinking about actually this is good for announcements, right? So we have tonight a specific Power BI user group that's going on. Sadly, though, you can't actually join. I think we're filled up, Tommy. All right, is the event technically filled with all the people?
You can't join live.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, you can't join in person.
The in person is closed. So, also for those who, if there's anyone who maybe that like 3 people who did not pay or did not provide a full name and their username is like, ADTUM or something like that. And you try to show up and you didn't pay and they don't let you in. I've sent out so many emails and notifications, so you cannot get upset at the user group. Make sure everyone checks. But yeah, RSVP
or bring $3
because it is Chicago and it's a big building. So if your name had to be there, valid name. Because otherwise you ain't getting upstairs.
Yeah, Adam doesn't cut it.
My passing thought this morning, Tommy, was like, is my name on the roster?
I added you.
Thank you.
Thank goodness. I didn't sign up for it. That's
Mike didn't pay. So
they didn't. I don't pay. I don't pay for these kind of things. Excellent.
There you go.
So that's coming up. So if you want to watch live, the event will be on YouTube and LinkedIn. It'll be on our channel, so you'll be able to see that. You can also ask questions live. So it'll be at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's when we're going to start the live stream, and so people you can listen to the answers that are going to be broadcasted from the office of Chicago. I guess the Chicago Microsoft office, and then if you want to watch it, Tommy just dropped the link in there for the YouTube people. You can join that link and listen in and ask your own questions, and we'll try and funnel those questions together and direct them towards Marco and Alberto. Excellent. The only other thing I can think of that we should probably announce here is a little bit. We have introduced a new website that's dedicated just for the community. I'm really digging it. I think it's a lot of fun. We are getting lots of content together, and most certainly the bookmarks section of this is like my favorite part right now. Tommy keeps adding like 20 links a day, and I don't even go anywhere else now to look for news. It's like I go to other websites like LinkedIn or anything else and look for like who's posting the most recent articles, and Tommy already has a link for most of that stuff already because he must be getting up at 4:30 in the morning and combing through all the internet and making sure that all the good stuff's there.
it says who who adds it to the collection and at what time. So I'm like, I don't think I slept really well last night. He's like, Tommy Pulley added this at 2:13 a.m.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Exactly. 206, 209, 213. Good. Speaking of getting up too early.
That is the definition of getting up too early.
Or maybe not sleeping.
Or
if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and check out Jam at Power BI Tips. Also, we're looking for suggestions. What other media things do you want to see on there? One thing I'm noodling right now is a report for YouTube. All the YouTube videos would be cool to see, your links to them and their thumbnails. So thinking there might be another other areas of content, other places that you look for multimedia stuff around Power BI. Let us know. Let us know in the chat, and we will see if we can figure out how to get some report together that would help collect and consolidate some of those things as well. All right. With that, any other kind of announcements, things we should
just real quick, I know James Bartlett is on the chat, and I want to thank him for all his PowerShell repos he's starring. So that was a bit of a rabbit hole. Yeah. So it's not ready yet, but I went through an actual productive rabbit hole, like scanner API, refresh history, and activity.
Yes.
I've talked about it in PowerShell. I'm like, yeah, but you have to do that manually, right? And we talked once about a solution where they were using a data flow for incremental refresh for the activity one to a data mart.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, couldn't you just do that to another data flow? And then using some other GitHub repos out there and what people have done with at least PowerShell, I'm like, I can just take create these bronze data flows that we've talked about, that solution, and then do incremental refresh and activity. Yep. But I can also push the scanner API and refresh history. So right now I'm actually really close to having that all automated. So
did you attend our yesterday's session?
A little busy, but I'll take a look.
Iowa user group. You should check it out. So actually, this is a great lead.
Did someone already do it?
It's not someone already did it. Not only did someone do it, but they've already done it in data flows, and we have an hour-long segment explaining how to do it. So there's actually some our user group that we helped out support. I produced the Iowa user group yesterday at around, I think it was noon or so, Central Standard Time. But Stephen from over in Europe presented for us. He did an amazing job. He went through what is an API, how do they work, had a great example. He even had an appropriate food example at lunchtime. So I'm, very hungry and during that time. So it was a very apt presentation. Very well done. Had great examples. Had some very clean demos, and he was literally writing M inside. It was super fun because we started calling the M beacon. I think of Alex Powers, right? So whenever M's involved, tagging him in various media or conversations that are happening or occurring, it's like, throwing the Batman symbol into the sky. Instead, it's like the Alex Powers M symbol. And so we were calling him on Twitter, and he was able to zoom over real quick for the end part of the meeting and was given some comment and some feedback there too, which was super fun having Alex join us as well. So anyways, it was super cool. Very good session. I'd highly recommend it. I will go find the link, Tommy, while you get going here on the session today. And I'll put it in the chat window if you wanted to watch it. It was very good, super informative, highly recommended.
Is that Steve Campbell?
No, it was Stephen Ressil.
Oh, got it.
RESL. Yeah, super good. He's spoken, I think, once or twice before. I think he spoke at our user group one time. Super sharp, very smart, and understood very well how to explain the story of getting data in the API and handling tokens and where to put that information on. Oh man, you know what? Okay, here's an idea. As we're getting through this, Microsoft, please, all three of you who are listening to the podcast, if you could make the API experience of getting data easier inside, like the data flow experience, like if you could just figure that out, like just make it easier, it would make me really happy. Because I don't want to have to build a custom connector every time I want to connect to an API that requires a token. Period. Just make it so. Figure it out. Just make me a connector that does that. That makes it easy for me to get a token in there.
And the more people are going to data flows right now, custom connectors can't do it in a data flow. So there's a lot of good use cases out there. I know that's on the roadmap, which is great. But
you can do it in a data flow. So you can use a data flow to go connect to the PowerBI.com APIs and go get data from it.
A custom connector.
But if you want to hide the secret, you have to kind of like bury the secret inside the data flow to make it work. Yeah. If you hide it with using, to me, this is like a no-brainer. Like Microsoft, just make this work. Figure out how you got to make a num query work so that you don't have to worry about the security anymore of that. Just make it so.
Microsoft, just dumb it down for us.
Make it so.
I know. That would make my life a whole lot easier. And I think that honestly, that would open up a ton of opportunity for people to bring more things to data flows. If you want to start driving use of data flows, get that to work. That'd be huge.
I bet they're already happy.
Huge. Anyways, sorry. Soapbox and a rant right there. Any other topics we should talk about? I'll take that as a no.
No.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's do it. Today's topic is Power BI as a part of the Microsoft Office installer. This is, I think, going to be a hotly debated one here. We're going to have some different opinions on this one. Tommy, give us a little run up here on the topic here. What's this all about?
Yeah, so welcome to the speculation podcast, which is
probably not speculation. It's real.
That's what we're gonna do. No,
that's true. That's true.
So
at some point
on the Power Platform Release Wave 2 for 2022, one of the features or the releases will be that Power BI Desktop will be automatically included on Office installs. So if you're installing Outlook and you're like, hey, download Office, well, Power BI Desktop's going to be automatically included in that little bundle. They're rolling it out slowly, and admins can still disable it. But at the same time, how many admins are going to do that right off the bat? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about, Power BI is free to download.
Where do you disable that though? I'm going to see where that lives.
Settings.
It's in an admin setting of your Microsoft 365 portion.
Yeah.
So this is interesting to me because everything we have up in this point is being controlled by like the business team. The business team can turn stuff off. There's a whole nother team that is like managing the Office 365 stuff typically, right? It's a totally different team that does this. So they got to be aware of what's going on.
But the biggest thing is how many people, we always talk about Power BI is free to download the adoption, but now people are going to randomly just find, and I'm sure Microsoft, when you open up Windows, is going to say, guess what? We also have this new thing called Power BI on your computer. Try it out. So there's going to be what I think we all imagine, what I imagine, an influx of new people who have never even heard of Power BI now easily being able to just open it and like, I can connect to Excel here. So really, we're just talking about what that impact is. What are the the implications for us from a BI team and for organizations as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Seth, what are your thoughts on some of this? What are your feelings? Where is this going for you?
I'm interested because apparently it's a very polarizing subject. Like so far, right? I love the hilarious. It's hilarious to me that David Eldersfeld, who's now at the mothership of Microsoft, who used to be a Microsoft MVP, just like post this in such a way that's like, I'm merely a lowly engineer that was looking at the roadmap like grenade, because like all the comments are just like, what?
Yeah,
like this is the greatest thing in the world, or what? Where's the off switch? So I love how it's gotten out into the mainstream here as far as somebody just calling something out on the roadmap. But I don't know. Like I kind of want to just go through like what are the positives and negatives. Like
just some of that.
People are obviously feeling strongly about it. What are some of the negatives?
So I think this is potential. So there's two things that I think are kind of coupled together here that I think are going to be interesting to see how they play out in this ecosystem. Microsoft is clearly pushing towards making sure everyone has data, right? And there's this whole 5 minutes to wow inside the Power BI desktop experience. And we've talked about this kind of at length, right? Yes, it does great things in 5 minutes, but it also doesn't really instill a lot of good data modeling habits day one, right? So you kind of can build some things that are working, but how efficient are they really? Are they really able to, have the right capability for you to leverage? It doesn't scale, I guess would be my question, right? Some of these things, these initial builds do not scale very well. So pairing with the idea that everyone gets desktop, and with that, you now have this, like, I can look at any report in SharePoint. I can look at any report without having to publish it to the service. So to me, these two features are like tightly coupled for me. Like there's going to be a large impact for organizations who are not paying attention, that all of a sudden, potentially, we're going to have hundreds, thousands of ad hoc reporting pieces. And we're going to hear a lot more of these use cases of, hey, I'm new to Power BI. Did you know I just pulled down this file every morning and hit refresh? And then the data's new. And then I put the file right back in SharePoint where I found it. Like I feel like I'm just going to be a story that we're going to hear in like 3 months. It's going to be, when this thing rolls out, this is going to be like a comment, and we're going to be like, oh my goodness, no one even understands how to set up a report to automatically refresh in the PowerBI.com service. Like, there's going to be some businesses that are going to be like, yeah, it just works. We'll cut some corners. We're just going to do this, and not actually put some planning and some thought behind this whole incredible service that helps them really automate. Anyways, that's kind of where my mind goes on some of this. So I feel like it's a very double-edged sword, but there's going to be, I think, some potential backlash around some of this, and we won't see it until it actually causes a problem.
It's interesting that you lumped in the viewing reports in OneNote or OneDrive, area.
OneDrive, SharePoint, yeah.
It's a viewing experience primarily, but like the last time I was like reviewing that, it sounded like if you had the appropriate permissions, you could edit it. Maybe. in that interface. But that's like removing desktop out of the like removing the need to have desktop.
Which I also think is a direction they want to go too.
Right, but that like it's interesting that there's
Tommy loves that
direction
idea.
going on, and then there's this direction going on, which is if they're moving away from the desktop, why would everybody need the desktop? Right?
Exactly.
But they're happening, right? They're both on the roadmap. They're both gonna,
It's gonna be there.
Tommy,
I think about the first time, like when I was a little green and I was looking in my Windows Start company and like, oh, what's this access thing? And you're like, you get a little curious. You're like, let me just see what this is. You've heard about it, but from an adoption point of view, from access, you're like, you're like an hour and you're like, screw this, I'm now, kind of thing. Be trying to figure out something like Microsoft Access for a noob, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But that's not going to be the case here, because Microsoft makes it very easy to say, connect to Excel. Look, here's your file. Look, there's the table. And, doesn't mean they're going to be good models, but that experience compared to another Microsoft like Office product, like let's say even like Visio, right? There's still some concepts that you really got to understand to just start, just to get the jump start. Power BI doesn't have that. So I think for me, this is a whole other part now rolled into adoption when we're talking about not just from a governance, but I think there's going to be a huge impact, and it's going to be like, to Mike's point, it's going to be this slow under the current. No one's going to really know it's a problem, because if someone creates a report from Excel and doesn't tell anyone, fine. Like, that's not going to really cause a lot of impact.
You don't not install Excel on someone's computer. Like, literally, you get hired to any company, and they're like, here's all your tools that you can do your work, and like Excel comes with the deal, right? And you're like, great, that's awesome. And then you're not like, oh, but by the way, we don't want you emailing Excel files around the organization. Like, it just is what it is. I mean, to some degree, it's like it's already become part of the business fare. Like, it has become so ingrained in like how you do work that if you didn't allow it, people would pitch a fit and go find other software to do their analysis in. Because I mean, it's like that critical to what's business is going on. I feel like Power BI is going to be the same thing at some point too. If we don't really not that we shouldn't give it out, but on the other hand too, like, do we want a bunch of Power BI files just laying around? A lot of manual work.
Well, what is, if you strip it down, is there anything in Power BI that you can? Well, it's a dumb question.
Okay,
let's move on. Great, cool.
We'll put a pin in that one.
Parking lot.
We'll put that question in the parking lot.
It's nice not to be in the parking lot for once.
I can't wait to see you in person later. You got to think about that, buddy. The thought here is Power Query has been in Excel for how many years?
Yes, and a long time.
How many systems could we connect to, and how could we, like, we've been able to pull data for a long time, or I should say business has been able to pull data, hit systems.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference? With like from an impact perspective?
Good question.
Right.
Good
like
question.
The largest like you're this is where like the IT realm of like, oh my gosh, we got to lock this down. Like we can't let people have access to data and share it. Like you're already doing that. Excel is the thing. Access was the thing, Tommy, to your point. Right. So this whole scope of like security and people doing something nefarious in a company, like you should have rules around that in your organization that
100%
protect you against that. And if somebody were to do that, they're insta fired, right? Like nobody's just shooting data out into the world. Now, from a usage perspective of like desktop, to me, this makes a lot of sense because we've also had that conversation where we're like, yeah, man, Power Query lived in Excel for how many years and nobody ever used it. Every time when Power BI came out, all of a sudden that's the conversation. Like you guys have had this for forever. So maybe this is like one of those. Yeah, we've talked about Power BI for 5 years. Yes, it's growing in adoption across companies, but does that mean everybody knows that Power BI is there? No.
Yeah.
Right? Because if, whomever person is looking at their screen and all of a sudden now Power BI desktop shows up,
what's that?
Like, are they more apt to click into that because it's slapping them in the face as opposed to them looking for like a reporting tool? You know what I'm saying? And knowing not like it's easy. It's right there for you. Like,
I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about your question there, Seth. Like every time someone clicks the Excel button, a little message window pops up and says, "Are you sure you want to open Excel? Are you sure you don't want to open Power BI instead?"
Why don't you want to do a data mart instead of Excel?
Would you like? Maybe it's designed to be a redirect, right?
Maybe it's a redirect.
It's part of Office, so it can be a redirect. Are you sure you want to do this?
Maybe they're going to change the color on it so it looks a little bit more like other tools.
Well, allow me to tag me in because allow me to answer your question pretty effectively.
Tagged.
Cool. So there's two major differences to Power Query's been around forever in Excel. One, until like the last 3 years, if you wanted to even know Power Query was there, you got to enable a plugin, right?
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily already
correct.
Very hidden.
Correct.
So
and you had to install something, so sometimes people didn't have the installer. Yes.
And the second thing is Excel has a lot of other purposes where Excel, like it's neat, but it's not an essential feature of Excel, right? Power Query.
Correct.
It's cool. And there's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. It's like the pivot table piece of it. It's like, hey, we have a pivot table. Like that's, and I even talk to people now. They're like, what's a pivot table? I'm like, oh my gosh, you haven't played with pivot table. Like this is like an essential for me. You got to learn that stuff because it'll make you so much more efficient.
Well, and like to your point, like Power BI, the first thing it says, connect the data, which is Power Query. The other part of this that makes this a lot different than just connecting to data in Excel is for a lot of organizations who probably everyone has pro licenses and they don't have their security set up in the administration. Well, now they're going to connect to data, put a few visualizations together, and they may just close that report or share it on OneDrive, or they're going to go, what's that publish button? And next thing you know, they're going to be able to publish. Like that's not a restricted part of the desktop application. So that to me is where all of a sudden the rise of the Wild West is going to happen. It's going to happen slowly. Then it's going to realize how much of an impact that is. Either you're publishing in my workspace and then you can share it with people because you might not have those, the restrictions in the admin settings. A lot of organizations don't. Because everyone needs pro now. And next thing you know, we have all these reports being shared in my workspace. And that to me is where I think the biggest implication of this, just someone connecting to an Excel file in Power BI and doing their own visualizations, fine. Like there's not a big issue there for me in terms of from our point of view. Obviously, that's a good adoption project for us to help say, hey, we know you're doing these Excel files. Why don't we give you a live data set to connect to since you already got it? I think that's a really good use case. But for them to being able to publish a report and then share it without, now more people are going to have that opportunity, or everybody. That to me is where my largest concern or the largest impact is going to be.
So I think you're actually talking into some point that was asked in the comments here in the questions. Power BI Park was asking, What do you think organizations should do right now to get ahead? What kind of governance should they put in place? And I think this is the same mantra that I would feel like I would handle with many organizations that are working with Power BI, is looking at everyone. There's going to be a slew of stuff created, and we should manage that. And so, like, making sure like there's a path to take these things that are generally available, and then work on promoting them. So like there's going to have to be a generalized promotion path or understanding of what that looks like. So when should we rely on reports? And from a governance standpoint or from an administration side, right? One is you have to decide early on, do you want this just to happen? Do you want everyone to get Power BI Desktop just out of the gate? And so that would be one part of that. Then you want to be able to, do you want to be able to allow people to publish to my workspaces? That's another part of this, right? There's some key, I think, decisions that organizations need to put their head around before they open up the, unfettered access to all Power BI everywhere on everyone's computer. I think you don't want to hinder it in the same way you wouldn't want to hinder Excel, but you also want a pattern around how do you promote stuff? What does it look like to go from basic to we trust this data?
Well, the problem, and I think the issue is going to be if it's all on either my workspace or just desktop, we're not going to have the ability to really track that. It's not really going to be part of the activity log.
I don't know though. I don't know. So I mean, SharePoint has its own set of activity logs somewhere else.
If they're saving in SharePoint, you would have to then be a global administrator of Office and then filter everything.
Here comes the problem. Yeah. So I think there's different data being generated in different areas. And then how do you centralize all that information together to really know what is happening inside your environment? Like, do organizations 100% know what's happening in SharePoint today? I'm not sure everyone's monitoring those to the highest level. And are those metrics and data being shared with the data team or the people working on the Center of Excellence for BI and data? Like, now that we have this new area, there might need to be some logging things that come into this pool of information from SharePoint. How many reports were uploaded? How many reports were viewed? There may be some other metrics there. I don't know. It's just interesting to me. And it'll be interesting also to see, like, if you have a report in SharePoint like this, is there an easy publish button from SharePoint into PowerBI.com? I don't know. That could add another whole ball of wax to things. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't do it.
So it's interesting that the publish action, you're saying, Tommy, instigates poor practices, but it also is kind of instigating the proliferation of pro licenses in an organization, like cost, right? Because essentially,
potentially,
even with a a free trial, right? It's like a taste, right? Like, here, now our team uses this, and then all of a sudden 60 days later, who do they go to when their free trial stops working? And now they have a dependency on a report. And like, are you trying to create that chaos in an organization? Like, I don't know, right? But it will, right? Like, who owns the budget for, the new reporting thing that just showed up?
Yep.
And that is a good point, though, right? Like, here's a tool that you can use that's going to help you, like, in your own work, but it also is a tool that, like, all of a sudden could cost the company more money. Do any of the other Office products do that?
Correct. I don't know.
I think so.
I don't think so. You can use, you pay, but also this comes too with so again, so I'm thinking about, like, as companies are migrating more to the cloud, right? So if anything, I see more companies are dropping their on-prem SharePoint. More companies are removing their on-prem servers and moving more things of data into the cloud regardless. So I think there's a general trend. And I feel like I saw a slide recently, or a slide deck from either Microsoft or somewhere, that was saying, like, when a survey was done of executives, and of those surveyed executives or CTOs, how many people were going to be investing more money on on-prem infrastructure, and like 4% said yes. The more overwhelming number was a lot of these CTOs were promoting and saying 14% of them were saying we have a project coming up that is moving some more of our infrastructure into the cloud. So to me, there's an overwhelming need for companies to continue to move into the cloud. And I've said this before in the podcast, like, there's this decision point when organizations are like, do we buy a new server, a new SQL server, or servers to support the next realm of data we're doing? for, I don't know, right now, capital investment, $1 million? Or do we just buy a couple more licenses and amortize that cost for all these new users, right? Do I want to buy a new SQL server for $1 million? Or would I rather, connect to data and light up a bunch of E5 licenses so everyone gets Power BI for free? Some of these smaller orgs are already paying for it. Or they're upgrading because they want to have, digital phones and all these, like the E5 license covers a lot of things there that you could kind of bury some of those Power BI costs into that E5 license.
So that's actually an interesting point, because I was about to say, yeah, most organizations are going to have the licensing. Doesn't matter for if you're not publishing, right? Like anyone create a report and put it in SharePoint. So there's kind of like there's almost two scenarios here, or that have different effects. You either have the organization who is like heavy into Power BI already, into the maturity that this rolls out, and then you have now these two worlds of SharePoint, My Workspace, and what the BI team's already built.
Yes.
Or you have organizations who have not invested at all in Power BI yet. They may not even be using it, right? They don't, because you don't need a license if it's going to be part of your install. So now all of a sudden there's going to be a little more from the bottom up approach, where both of those scenarios have different impacts or different approaches in terms of getting a handle on it.
And I wonder. What's interesting to me is I'm trying to think through what the use case or the persona is that this solves a problem for, right? Because if it was, we're just going to add it in, we're just going to add it into Office.
Yeah.
We just add this into Office so that you can skirt IT, right? Because IT controls sometimes what you can download on your machine, and if you do Office, now you're going to get it. However, it doesn't really do that based on the tweets, because IT can still control the scenario where they don't want it to show up in the Office suite.
Correct.
So it's not that, right? Like, is it simpler than that? Like, hey, Power BI as a technology needs to live in something.
Well, think about also, I mean, so we're talking about like organization down. What happens to the individual who just goes out and buys a Microsoft 365 license, right? The individual who's just going to get, hey, I just need, Word, Outlook, and Excel, and they go out and buy that license. Power BI desktop's already free. I think this potentially is another play for those other license experiences that are not always organization based, or I'm thinking like educational based, schools, colleges, right? There's a ton of colleges who, with your tuition, you get a Microsoft licensed piece of software. So if I'm Microsoft, and if I'm strategically thinking about, okay, there's this new world of data analysts that need to be taught in school or being educated right now, and the economy's going very sorely right now. So everyone's going to be going back to school to get more education. Why not, when they show up to get their free software from their school to do their work, why not include with that another free tool that's already free? You just have to go put it in the install bucket. So it gets
a lot of sense to me.
To me, that's a great play.
An education use case,
an education angle.
But that's kind of like the same thing I was referencing with like the punch in the face, right? Here it is, right?
Yeah.
Like you never knew you needed it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So
you're creating the need,
unlocking that door, regardless if it's education. But education's a great scenario or persona where I could see like that's part
makes
of
total
your course
sense to me.
You know nothing about Office and Microsoft products. Now it's part of it. Now
Boom.
It's part of the conversation from the get-go.
Yes.
But it's also now like part of the conversation in your workplace, because like, what is this new thing?
Not if you're in
the click on me.
Yeah, exactly.
Not if you're in the liberal arts, brother, because I did not care about any of this stuff back then.
Me neither, dude.
But
you guys were rolling on campus with your Macs, right? You didn't even know it.
Oh yeah,
I had no computer, dude.
I had no computer. I wrote everything out by hand when I was in school.
I hated
pen and paper.
Microsoft was like, I was always a Mac guy. Yeah. Anyways, well, this actually brings up an interesting idea, because we're talking about the opportunity, and honestly, as much as we're saying the negative, oh my gosh, this is terrible, this can actually, if we, from a BI point of view, and because I'm thinking about this, like, what does this mean for the BI team, or what's the impact? If we can get on top of this and you have a game plan going into this, this can actually be a great opportunity for adoption. And truly, so what's the biggest thing that we've always said that we're trying to understand is like, what are people trying to build? And we want to see their examples. I've talked about seeing people use personal bookmarks, and we build things off of that. Well, a lot of people right now, what do? They export data and they put it in a pivot table, like the sales op person, and that's way people are reporting, just exporting data. Well, now they can visualize it themselves. I guarantee you're going to see more than one use case of someone exporting data from a official Power BI report and then connecting to that in their Power BI desktop, since they may already see it, and creating visuals from there for their manager or for their sales team. Mm-hmm. But that's an opportunity to me, because as long as we can track that, because now we have an example of what they're trying to do that they have not been able to voice.
I agree.
So
this tool is a great tool. It's a great equalizer, and it's a great communicator between what the IT group needs to do and what the business needs to do. I think it's I'm firmly believing like this is, I mean, so don't get me wrong. When you said earlier, like we're poo-pooing on this idea and don't love it. I think it's a great idea. I think it's very brilliant for Microsoft to do this. And I think this is a great move. I think what I'm just trying to say is, like, organizationally, just be mindful that's coming. We need to plan for this.
Well, to that point though, like, to that point, Mike, what is your recommendation to organizations?
So, I mean,
if you want to properly roll out things, do you disable this?
I think you would disable it initially until you get your feet wet with what this could mean. It would be nice to even roll this out with a test group as well, or work on what does the training. So, okay, maybe people are going to be able to do things in Excel, right? And they're just making stuff and data, and it just goes across the organization. There's an opportunity here before this rolls out to your organization, is to think about how does, like, so if I'm doing this for my company, I'm looking at a COE, a Center of Excellence, or the community practice. We're talking to these people and saying, hey, this thing's coming down the roadmap. We need to talk to the owner of the Microsoft 365 or the Office suite, and we need to engage with them, talk to them, have a conversation like, hey, this is coming. We have these concerns about this. What does the company stance look like this on these things? What do we feel like this is going to be doing? If we have a strong data culture, maybe we say, yeah, this is good. Let's roll it out. Maybe this is also something where you prepare a little minimum amount of training around this before we light these things up for you. So there may need to be some more internal company policies being made about how you share data. Maybe some more internal policies around how does this flat file looking at things in SharePoint look like? When do we use this? What does that look like? How do we communicate to our organization what this looks like from a plan? So I think as long as the organization is planning it as a part of their roadmap and providing appropriate support and documentation around it, I think it'd be okay. I think it'd be fine to roll it out. I just don't know if organizations are going to be pivot in a month to be able to, like, prepare for it.
What if I don't have a COE, but I use, like, Power BI is selectively used within the organization? You leave it on or turn it off? Like we're having this conversation, but it's not like everybody's going to know that all of a sudden this is going to be there, right? How many organizations is this going to catch off guard? And
all the ones who listen to the podcast will know, and they'll have good conversation. Like, then we're good.
All the Fortune 500.
I was going to say they're fine. They're good. About 90% of the Fortune 500 are already aware of this, and they know what's coming. And I think Microsoft's also trying to. I mean, if you're talking the Microsoft, CAT team, there's probably other teams that are also directly communicating with these large organizations that this is coming. I hope.
If I don't know. I wouldn't think that.
No.
If my goal as Microsoft is adoption of a tool, why would I go tell people how to turn it off? Like, there's the option if you're paying attention.
It's going to be one of the 1,000.
I guess the thing that, like, great, right? If I'm on top of everything and I know that this is coming, sorry, chat's distracting me. If I don't have a COE, if I've already got some Power BI running, but I don't want to, like, just unleash Power BI in the organization because I don't have the structure there yet, like, isn't that potentially causing a problem here where all of a sudden, like, this is going to start showing up? I'm going to get viral adoption, or I could get viral adoption within your organization. Yes. How do you backtrack from that? Right? Like, how do you wrap data culture or COE or, like, any planning around it if you don't, like, if it's not there yet? Because you and I both have people we know that, like, still haven't been able to figure out how to wrangle wildfire adoption in an organization.
Yep.
And to me, like, this is a double-edged sword. One is,
yes, it is. Yes,
it's slapping people in the face like, hey, there's this new BI tool that you can use and it's fantastic, and you like can get some great insights. But on the other side of that is like, how do you manage that? How do you actually, like, how do you fit this chaos into what is, like, what can be just a fantastic way that this, enhances the value of your organization and the data within it. And those two things are in direct conflict with one another. Right. Or I haven't seen anybody like put out the brush fire yet and then start the controlled burn after, things have gotten going yet.
I've seen it in one company where the brush fire started, something sorely bad happened with that brush fire. And so much so that they locked everything on down and off.
It's not a great story.
Not a great story though. But again, it was more of this, they permissed, there was permissiveness at the Power BI level, and people, there was no education plan. There was no telling people how to share things. People shared things to the entire organization that should have not been shared to the entire organization. No one was monitoring what was being shared to the entire organization. And so a team member or teams were sharing things accidentally to the entire organization that should not have been shared. It's going to happen. But I think the idea here is you don't know that's going to happen until there's a problem. So I want to be more forward thinking in that.
So I guess the question there is, you could do that with other tools like a Word doc, Excel, like you dump it in the wrong SharePoint folder and you share the wrong folder access to everybody in the org as opposed to one person, right? Like, so there's other things that can be done. In that scenario, I suppose sharing a SharePoint folder to a large audience is the same thing as publishing, your report to the whole enterprise, or
maybe less discoverable though.
Completely disagree.
I mean, I would say,
well, and I guess that's where my question comes.
Yes.
Is it the same, or is Power BI in this position where you could make a much bigger mistake?
I think so.
Technically, you could, because you could share externally. You could, like, you'd have, like, in an email, like, you'd have to take that Excel doc and drag and drop it into an email and say, hey, yo, so-and-so in another company, here's my sales data, as opposed to you were part of an AD group or, something I shared to in the entire org, and now you see my report that you never should have seen.
Well, I don't think we can think of Power BI as the same concept as a collaborative tool like PowerPoint or Word. I mean,
Correct.
If your company
is
sharing,
ironic, seeing as how, like, some of the mantra is, oh, it's PowerPoint,
right? But it's not
everywhere.
that, because
it's not.
You don't publish all your PowerPoints to where everyone's looking at that on a daily basis.
It's still a single file, and it's less discoverable. The PowerPoint doesn't have a PowerPoint.com that is like this shareable community-based thing that's collecting of all the PowerPoints. Like, to your point, Tommy, like, it's exactly it. There is an aspect of Power BI that is easy to share all of the content. That's the point of it.
Right. And that's the audience of Power BI is completely different, where if you're establishing the company's goals, it's a point of trust too, so I don't think we can even compare it to like managing Excel, because everyone uses Excel. Your company's usually not real, there may be a few Excel files that your C-level people are looking at, but Power BI's purpose, like the purpose of is to do that for the organization. So now if you have these random reports scoping in, how is a user going to know the difference if this is sales by a sales rep, right? Created by Joe Schmo, compared to like the actual sales data. But how will they know?
But this is the problem you're going to have, though. I mean, you already have it today. You already, the challenge isn't different, I think, at this point, right? So the tools, to me, what's happening here is the technology is slightly changing. The technology is adjusting what people can do and how they can do things. So for example, like, you can make a Power BI report, you can share it. This new feature that's coming, the technology is now adapting, it's adjusting. And so because of this new technology change, the process of how we do things is going to have to adjust. And then people need to learn that process and adapt. So like what I'm trying to liking the situation I'm trying to liken this to is, if you give access to those upstream data sources, you could now have multiple people. So let's just say we have a lake, and people can just go access and write queries against it and get stuff out of it for whatever reason. If you have two different audiences looking at the same information inside the lake, they're going to process the data differently. They're going to filter different things out. They're going to have different stories. And to your point, Tommy, right? There's going to be points in the business. How can we trust? Where does truth come from? What does that single source of truth look like when you have more people doing their own things across the organization? I think this brings an opportunity for companies and organizations to really sit down and think what is valuable to our business, because now the capability of creating lots of rich, good data or good analysis has increased, right? It's adding a benefit, but you're now introducing, I think, other problems. And so the only way to me, some companies will solve this by shutting off access to anything in the lake or the back end stuff.
It's not just that. So how many organizations do you know where they're sharing, like the security groups and groups are in the workspace level settings? Right. So all of a sudden a user going to go, what's this data hub? Oh, look at all these data sets I can connect to. What's the data flow? And that's going to be so easy, so they don't need a data lake. And a lot of organizations do that. Like, yeah, we just give access to the workspace for people. So to me,
exactly.
Yeah. But to me, it's kind of like trying to tame a wild horse, where if you can do
you can break it, and people ride horses.
No,
it works.
If you can tame it, this can be a huge asset for adoption, but you have to have the prep. So
I'm just going to ride around my Ferrari instead. I'm going to ride 150 horses as opposed to like your one horse. So you can sit, you can stay in Excel. You can stay in
horse Ferrari.
I don't know.
Ferrari.
I don't know how many horses our Ferrari has. 300 horses. How many horses have a Ferrari? Someone fact check me here. How many horses does a Ferrari range have? 500 horses? Tommy, you keep riding around your Excel on your one horse. I'm going to ride around Power BI on my 500 horses.
I have no idea how this correlates at all. Like I'm trying to find the analogy. This is a long walk to that joke, but
it aligns because the Italians are coming to Chicago.
You have to explain.
They're from Italy. Ferrari is from Italy. Therefore, Ferrari.
It's a long walk.
I'm tired with no water on this one.
I'm
not following it all the way there.
Oh, I can't lead this horse to water.
All right, forget the horse. Put the horse in the parking lot, okay? So
we'll put a pin in that one.
With the car, we'll
put a pin in the
horse. I think for teams, so where the kind of that critical point of this being either a huge asset or detrimental is establishing the BI team, if you have it, where they do have a support center. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole community of practice, but it is at least established at the organization that these people are on the BI team. Here's how you get support on Power BI that you should already have, but now making that more essential. And, it's not just establishing support, but establishing the people who are responsible for that.
Yes.
So agreed. I know who, like, someone's going to build a report, like a sales op, like I can't, they want this, but I don't know how to do it. Oh, I know who to go to. And that's a perfect, case study, I think, of how this can be helpful. The other part of this is making sure your setting is the configuration of, or do you have everyone shared with the workspace? Because then they're going to have access to all the data there. Do you have your tenant settings right?
There's an API that says, here are all the things that are tenant-wide shared.
Yeah.
This has become so much of an important topic that they made an API just for that topic.
Because they knew. Exactly.
Because they were asking for it.
But this has to be prepped before, or else then that Wild West is really going to happen. And I think having your admin configuration and game plan prepped and ready to go is, to me, like, I don't know which one's more important, the establishing that BI support or this, but they're parallel. They're parallel in terms of they're critical. If you don't either establish, or it's an and, not an or. So
that's where I'm laying on this thing. I don't think you turn it off. I think you turn it off as long as you need to, in order to prepare what you feel like as a company is the right way to approach this and educate your team about how to use it correctly. What are your stances on how these are going to work? And so I feel like at some point, particularly for these two new features, coming with Office and sharing to, or being able to view reports inside SharePoint, I think you initially turn it off for a small select. Hopefully, these are things that you can turn off for a secure, you can allow it for a security group and test it to some group. I don't know, but we'll see. The feature's not done yet, so it would be nice if you could have a small group of people explore the feature.
It's part of Office. So there's no security groups around. Like it's like the same with the release center is like current.
I don't know.
Current channel, semi-annual. Yeah. So
I mean,
I can kind of cube
that's not iterative in any case. Like you're like. I would turn it off for 2 months and then start talking to other organizations that are using
who
it right
failed
away
in
and
it.
just see what happens. Yeah, no, I mean, just hey, did it spread like wildfire? Like, what did that do to your Power BI environment? Like,
yeah. Oh, we got 300 more new workspaces and thousands more reports and and it's everyone test. It's demo sales report. Everyone's just loading the same demo sales report each time. Oh goodness. Anything else, Tommy?
Yeah, I think the only place you could do the security groups is maybe like Intune.
Or, yep. That's what I'm thinking. But I know there is metered control and access to these things. So maybe that's something that's going to be coming a bit more is around those elements. We might have lost Seth here.
Oh boy.
I'll have to do Seth's final words for him. His internet went out. This has never happened before.
Well,
anyways, it's probably a good time to wrap. Undo our final thoughts here. Hold on. He's coming back. There we go.
Hey,
there we go. Whew.
That was really odd.
Something it froze for you for a second and you just disappeared. So we're back. Don't close that browser tab that you're on.
Yeah, it wasn't touching anything. So I want to get my final thought in here.
Okay, let's get some final thoughts.
Turn it on, turn it off. If it's on, like I'm turning it off.
Okay. Final
and purely for a selfish reason. Because that we haven't talked about at all. This just would absolutely complicate the hiring process for somebody who knows Power BI exponentially. It's already hard enough, but if you ask somebody, do you know Power BI? Now everybody's just gonna be like, yeah, because it showed up.
I use it.
And I opened
my tenant.
You're like,
oh yes, that is so true. Okay,
that's my parting shot. No, I would think I'm on the fence. I'm not putting my foot in one area or the other yet.
So Tommy, where do you say? Turn it on, turn it off.
I would say if you have no idea what you're doing, turn it off. But if you're using Power BI and you're on the BI team, you put the plan together. And I think the goal would be to have it on when it rolls out.
Yes.
With the prep. So that's the plan.
And what I would say, so I'm going to go. So Seth, you said off. Tommy, you said off initially, but then roll it in. I'm going to say on, but I'm going to do it with a caveat. I would say leave it on. But I'm hoping that I'm in a company where I'm making moves and strides, and we've already talked about what is the center of excellence. We already have people engaging with creating content. That's what our company says. And I'm also hoping that there's some policy that's already been developed and in place that we can easily point people to. Because some of the companies I've worked with, I've helped them build their center of excellence. So we have a single place. Here are links to reports. Here's documented sections of our reports. Here is some intro and 101s of how to get started with Power BI and report building. So with those things in place, I think those companies are going to be much more equipped because when questions come and the help desk IT things may ramp up for these Power BI things that are occurring now, you can then funnel those through to the BI team, and then those questions can be answered and directed towards the center of excellence that you've already started. It's just going to make that experience. And I think James, great point here, right? James, I'm with you, right? I'm stoked about having Power BI rollout, just like you are, James. And I think this is a good idea. And I think this is going to be engaging many more users with data. And I think potentially this engages a lot more data culture and helping us have those conversations. But we want to make sure the organization's equipped to have those kind of conversations. And I think having someone who owns this, or if there is a BI and central team, making sure that we let them aware that there may be more requests and prepare them to handle more of this support around Power BI across the organization.
Yeah, I don't want to be pigeonholed into the no. I think this is one of those. It depends. No, I don't. Not. You're not putting me there.
Nobody puts Seth in a corner.
I think I'm firmly on the it depends.
Okay.
It depends on the organization and a lot of the things that you put in place. Or like you even said, if you have all of this structure there and this is a conversation and then all it is a communication and it enables a lot more users, okay, makes a lot of sense. If you don't have any of that, do you just let it go because that, solves people's business problems? You could. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that going to potentially add a whole lot of other problems that you have to solve at a later date? Probably. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It's like a whole new world, man. Yeah. Every feature every quarter, there's at least a couple of features that are like, okay, I wonder what this is going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
This one is,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it is
I'm
the right.
I'm behind it. I'm behind it.
I think it's going to be good.
The goal, I think you're aiming to have this on when it releases in your tenant.
Yeah, I agree.
So
does the release date say when this is going to be hitting, so we can give people some heads up? What does the roadmap say? Is that like Q1 of 2023 is when
it's going to roll out depending on license? I think Muhammad Ali, who works at Microsoft, they said they're going to start a very slow rollout this year. It will probably land for most organizations next year. And I think there's something about like depending on your license as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what is inside the roadmap. Speaking of which, if you want to look at the Microsoft roadmap, you can go to jam.powerbi.tips. The first thing that loads is the Microsoft roadmap.
That's where I'm at right now.
That's where I'm going right now to check out the roadmap. So I'm trying to scan through March. You can even search for thing here, Office. Search for Office. Power BI Office installer. So it already been released. It says September 2022 in released. So it's already here. You better be ready for it. I don't know how to click on that link there. Is that like that's probably the initial release there.
Overdue or out there, slowly being released to some companies or regions, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so the feature details. Power BI will now roll out with the Office Update and Office installer. The rollout will begin with E5 monthly users and then roll out to E3 followed by E1. Wow, they're putting in all the E's. That's crazy.
So, you know what you should do is just rename this podcast to like some clickbait. Fortune 500 companies need to know this now.
That is totally true.
Probably get more views instead of this theoretical titles.
Hey, if anything, we need better thumbnails. I think we should update this thumbnail so it's more like Fortune 500 companies must know this about Power BI.
Why your company's gonna fall apart with Power BI?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like your company's about to explode.
That's selling out. Can't do that.
Can't do it. Awesome. Well, with that, I think we've burned through a perfectly good hour of time here. I appreciate the conversation. For everyone in the chat, thank you very much for your conversations, your thoughts. It has been very valuable it's made me chuckle. It's made me think. I've been contemplating some of your answers here. I liked Power BI Park's answer. He was saying, no one's allowed to get to Power BI unless they explain to me row context and filter context. You explain that to me, you get Power BI. I'm like, oh, that's a little harsh, but I think it's a good idea. If you don't know what you don't know. But yeah. We were all there at one point, right? We were all in a place where we didn't know Power BI at all, and we had to learn it. So, this is just another opportunity for opening up Power BI for more people to learn about Power BI. Anyways, with that, we only ask that if you like this podcast, if you got some good nuggets out of here, if you didn't know Power BI was coming with the Office install, and now you do, we're happy you know about it now. So make sure you share that with your organization, work on it, think through it. And we'll hopefully see some of you tonight again on the stream again this evening. And we'd love to see some of you guys in person in downtown Chicago as well. So please do us a favor, reshare this podcast if you thought it was good. If you work at a Fortune 500 company, make sure they see this video because there's probably a lot of people there who want to learn about explicit measures. That's probably a good thing. Anyways, where else can you find the podcast, Tommy?
You can find the podcast everywhere it's available. It's part of your Office install now too. So we'll see if we can figure that.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Spotify, Google Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. You can search all of our podcasts. And we've done a lot of this. So to Mike's point, if you do enjoy this, share the word. That's the biggest way you could show that
like the podcast.
We should keep doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all very much. We'll see you later on.